this button. We're good to go. All right, and I see people are joining from Armenia, from Dubai. I myself am currently in Russia at the moment, waiting to return to UAE soon, hopefully. So we are going to talk a bit about essentially just the future of organizations and looking at loyal and engaged employees and what does it really take, especially in times when we're going through this pandemic and all the changes that the world of work is going to be experiencing. Super excited to have great speakers on board with us, whom I'll introduce in just a moment. So it's going to be quite just an engaging conversation. I'm going to be asking Mariam and Tatev some questions that they're going to bring some insights and their own knowledge on this topic as they are the experts. Throughout the session, however, please do feel free to drop your comments, messages on the chat box, questions. Let's keep it engaging. This is for you, so your questions and your experiences are also valuable to us. And we know that having a successful business is every employer's dream, essentially. And companies emphasize employee engagements. Hundreds of millions of dollars is spent globally every year on employee engagement. Yet, good talent is still difficult to maintain and to keep, and let alone to just find as well. And although companies are really throwing a lot of perks and different initiatives into employees' benefits and these sort of things, what is it that's still sort of holding us back, the good talent back from staying and being loyal to a company? So these are some of the things we're going to talk about, and it really, from personal experience at least, it's not that the employer, the employees can force workplace engagement. It has to be really ingrained in the business and within each individual employee. But how do you actually do that? So some of the questions we're going to be looking at is, when it comes to culture and values of behavior within a company, how does that play out when it comes to, maintaining loyal and engaged employees? What are the early signs that something is wrong in an organizational culture? We're also going to look at some generational trends. So now we have millennials, we have Gen X, Gen Z, we have multi-generational workforce. How do you then, address each workforce, each generation individually? Right. And then we're also going to look at, is there a link between psychology of the individual and the psychology of organizations? And whose job is it really to take care of engagement and loyalty of employees? So these are just some of the questions we're going to be addressing today. I hope you all also came with your questions as well. So we are now going to go ahead and get started. Let me just introduce myself briefly, and then I'll introduce our speakers for the day. So you should be able to now see my camera. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Elena Agaragimova. I'm a managing partner at Bessern. We are a digital platform providing really just transformative experiences for individuals or organizations around the UAE and the Middle East region, as well as with some global reach also. So I myself come from talent development background. Super excited to have two guests on board with me today, Mariam and Tatev. They're joining us in just a minute. Ladies, you can go ahead and turn on your cameras. They should be coming up in just a minute. There's Tatev and Mariam.
Hi.
Yes, Mariam, please, or Tatev, let's start with you. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, hi, I'm Tatev. Nice meeting you all. I've been in HR for already nearly 7 or more years. I worked in a number of international companies and have managed teams across the globe in Armenia, in countries like in Europe, in USA, and have I feel and I know and I've become sure that HR is my passion. So hope to hear good and interesting questions from you and hope that you will enjoy my answers. Mariam?
Yeah, sure. So, hello to everyone. First of all, I'd like to say hi to everyone joining us today. Hello, Elena and Tatev, and thanks for having us. We'll do our best, of course, to provide a great value to everyone listening to us right now, and later, of course, take some questions. So my name is Mariam. I am the CEO and co-founder of Lucky Carrot. And actually, to be honest, I would never think that I'm gonna be involved in a business within HR field. Like, I would have never thought about that. But the main purpose of Lucky Carrot, and the main purpose of what we do right now, is to tackle the employee disengagement problem, and hopefully we're gonna go deep into it and share some very, very great facts about it, and of course some specific facts also for the UAE people.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. Thank you for that. It's really great to have you. So let's just go ahead and jump into the topic. So I have a list of questions for you. However, from those of us, those who are joining us, we have quite a good number of attendees right now. So feel free to drop your questions. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and get started with my questions. And I think the most relevant thing to talk about is in the context of this, essentially this global pandemic crisis that we're going through. So corporate culture has been kind of put aside at the moment, as there are more important topics that we need to focus on, such as the bottom line, right? So now everybody's just like business and making sure to kind of survive. So how do you feel about this? What do you think about this current situation as it goes to corporate culture?
Tatev, will you answer it?
Sure. So I'd like to start with a short intro on what generally corporate culture is and why is it important. And even considering the fact that currently a lot of businesses are more into saving their own businesses and making sure that the ship doesn't drown, we still have to care for making the corporate culture stronger and having our peoples more involved engaged in the in company prosperity, because both my experience and a lot of researches from different universities, let's say, have proven that engaged employees are the key to corporate success. And when speaking about corporate culture is one of the drivers that brings to good and high engagement rates. Why does it bring high engagement rates? Firstly, because people generally, especially when we dive deeper into generation issues, especially millennials, which are already the majority of our employees, are more into ideas and are more, I would say, motivated by the change they make and they see in the business, in the company, and the company itself, how socially responsible the company itself it is. So all this is generally joined in the corporate culture. Yeah, companies are different. Some it is not a must for companies to like sit and start thinking about, okay, let's develop this type of corporate culture, because in many cases corporate culture is developed like through the life of the company. It is developed through the traditions, the beliefs the company has. It is developed by means of through the people the company hires and through the people the company promotes. So it can develop organically, and it can develop just like on purpose as a part of corporate, let's say, strategy. But in both cases, even yes, in some cases and some companies have put it aside, but even in current situations, I do believe that it is better to put a lot of stress on your corporate culture and improve and insisting and not insisting, but building it stronger in your employees' bones, I would say. Maybe I'm sort of translating the expression from Armenian, and it may sound weird to English-speaking partners, but we ourselves, with our company, we're doing a number of events that we stopped doing for a while when we were in the office, just because we were busy with like developing new products and I don't know, fighting and winning new markets, but we started like enforcing the culture we have, and the culture we have is based on the people, uh, based on learning and development, and we've started doing events to enforce this. So uh, I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm jumping here and there,
No, it's
sort
great.
of.
It's good. It's good. It's good to kind of get us. So you've actually touched point on so many different things that so many other questions that I want to go into. But I also know that you guys do some work with clients around the globe as well. So can you give an example? So you've described, that the corporate culture essentially needs to be developed through the employees, through essentially just living the day to day. So can you give some good examples of, or what have, so actually the know-how? So we understand that the corporate culture is developed through the actual actions and the daily the daily activity of the leadership essentially at first, and then it kind of trickles down to the bottom line. But what are some actual things that companies do? So what are those things that we can maybe implement in our own organizations from the experience that you guys have had working with some companies around the globe?
Sure.
I will start, then Mariam can continue.
Yeah.
The most important thing that I have been like, it's my mantra. Uh, all companies should practice what they preach. So if you're saying that you are an employee-oriented company, okay, it's a very big notion. If you say that you're an equal opportunities company, and you stop hiring people based on their racial or I don't know physical disabilities or something else, so you will never have the healthy and the true and organic corporate culture. So this is what I have seen myself through my experience, and I have seen through other companies' experiences. When you give a promise to your employee, and especially when you're mapping an employee and candidate experience, you already give them a promise through your employer branding, through your messaging. And when you map this experience must be what your promise and what your staff and your people actually face during with your company should coincide. If there is a discrepancy, you're definitely having the wrong culture or you're having the wrong messaging. And it affects negatively all your experience, your candidate experience, your employee experience, your turnover rates, your engagement rates, everything. The first and most important thing is practice what you preach. Leave what you promise your staff. Some other examples, Mariam?
Yeah, Miriam, you wanted to talk a bit about
Sure.
employee engagement as well, yeah?
Well, that's a very, very big topic, but like if we talk about some examples in big corporations, I would say that in every big corporation there is a recognition program, and that's one of the biggest reasons that they have become very big. And whether it be KPMG, Walmart, eBay, DHL, Coca-Cola, and so on. And then the thing is that there are stories where big corporations, as soon as they learned and applied recognition programs, many things changed, like I don't know, revenue went up, employee happiness went up, productivity went up, and so on. And of course, in different companies, these changes occur in different ways. And I don't know, one company, the profits can go up this much, and in the other company, it can go this much. So, but let me tell you an example which I will project to other companies, which will usually happen when a great recognition program is applied in a company. And we know that recognition is one of the top reasons of employee engagement. Recognition increases employee engagement. Now, but before I can tell the story, I want to tell that why recognition is good. Actually, there is a book called The Carrot Principle. And in this carrot principle, like it is written by two great co-authors and by Adrian Gostick and Chester Elton. And in this book, it very well explains what good does recognition do in the companies when they apply it. So first of all, it creates trust culture where I believe as an employee what I do matters. And second of all, it of course creates an emotional connection, which is something that we need right now even more. And third of all, it creates a standard of excellence for your whole crew, for the people in the same boat, meaning employees in the same company. Now, the example I want to just share with you has nothing to do with the business. It has to do something with sports. And this is a story that goes back in 1956, June 6, when Roger Bannister and World won a record running a 1 mile in less than 4 minutes. It was 3 minutes and 59 seconds, and he did what was conceived as impossible before that. And everyone thought that a lot of years later, someone can maybe break that record, but it took just 1 month. 1 month later, his rival, Roger's rival, John Landy from Australia, ran a mile in 3 minutes and 58 seconds. And it turned out that what accelerated him was recognition. Because when Roger achieved this and set a record, it showed that the other athletes it showed the other athletes it was possible with attendance, rewards, and acclaims. So the recognition was attendance, appraisal, shout outs, claps, and the audience is their cheerleader. And do you remember when I said that the recognition does a good thing? It sets a standard for excellence for the whole crew. So in this case, when Roger ran a mile in less than 4 minutes, he set a standard for excellence that others could achieve. And when comparing with the workplace, it shows that what's possible to the employees when you recognize them, and they have the desire to have the rewards and recognition. So recognition is what accelerated Australian runners' pace, and recognition is something that accelerates an employee pace in company. So in whatever company you take, this is the general thing that is going to happen in every company.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, actually, Mariam. And I think there was also studies done, and they, of course, we know this, that the financial rewards is not on top of the list, although it might seem like it. But we know that the top three, actually, one of them is recognition. Another one is the ability to actually progress, so the development, so that learning and development piece as well is more important than essentially the money aspect.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, if we just have time, we can later, after the questions, we can jump more into employee engagement topic and provide a lot of great value and information according to the great studies and based on secondary primary research.
Sure. If you don't mind, maybe you can share with us just at least some parts of that research. Maybe you can share some information right now. It would be good to also kind of see some statistics around the topic as well.
Oh, sure. Okay. So the thing is that, since our service is an HR platform and specifically it is designed to tackle the employee disengagement problem. So coming from the nature of our service, we have done a lot of research, and me and my team have been researching and studying a lot about employee engagement from, books and studies, especially Gallup studies and articles. And employee engagement is such a general concept. And today, so I just want to mention some key points, like what employee engagement is, what the side effects of it are, and what's the reason actually of employee disengagement and how to solve it, and of course uncover what's the secret behind the loyal and engaged employees. And of course I've got some interesting statistics for the UA. So just first of all, let's define who an engaged, disengaged, or actively disengaged employees. I think I have never read any better definition of a disengaged employee than in Gallup's report called The State of the Global Workplace. And Gallup is a global analytics and advice firm, and they publish a lot of reports with long years of studies in 155 countries, exploring employee engagement, employee experience, and company culture and their side effects. So they define a disengaged employee as someone who kind of agrees to give their time in exchange for the salary they receive, but they are not going to give their best ideas, efforts, passion, and full involvement to the company, or in other words, go the extra mile for the company. The engaged employees is going to drive innovation and go the extra mile for your company, so they're more connected with the company, with strong bonds, they feel the company purpose, and they live the company values. And actively disengaged employees are the ones who destroy whatever engaged employees do, whether when they innovate, solve problems, bring in new customers, improve customer experience and loyalty, etc. And it's very sad to look at the statistics, because around the world, the engaged employees are only 15%, and the disengaged employees are the majority, 67%. And you have the remaining 18% who are actively disengaged. And to picture this better, like you can think of your company as a big boat, where everyone is kind of supposed to row in the same direction. And in this boat, you've got the top 15% of engaged employees that are at the front rowing and pushing it really hard to move the boat forward. So the company to move forward to reach its vision. And then after this 15% of engaged employees come the 67% of not engaged employees who just kill the time, who that wait when finally the lunch or coffee break will be. And unfortunately, these are not only people from your support, sales, or marketing teams, they can be also from the executive committee. And so these people, how Gallup mentions, are kind of sleepwalking. They work with no passion and no energy. And unfortunately, it's hard to notice this kind of people unless you've worked with them enough. And finally, in this boat, after the 67% of not engaged employees, you have the 18% of actively disengaged employees who are rowing backwards. So the 15% is pushing hard to move the company fast, and you've got the 18% rowing backwards. And like if they had the chance, they would sink the boat. And they are like behind the quality defects and errors. And now you have a problem that you need to boost employee engagement, and you want to have people at your company that will row forward, that will be behind every good things that happen at the company, and that can increase customer loyalty, experience, and satisfaction. And for the UAE, in the Gallup's 2013 year report, they mentioned that in the United Arab Emirates, there was a 26% of engaged employees. But then years later, 4 years later in 2018, in the MENA region, like in Middle East and North Africa, they reported 14% engaged employees. And this is so much of wasted opportunity and power for the company. So you got to boost employee engagement. To boost it, you got to understand, like, why does this happen? Why an employee may be disengaged at your company? And there are tons of reasons. But as you mentioned, Elena, like the top two are the recognition and growth, where I can grow professionally and of course personally at a company. So if we have time, you say, Elena, like if we have time, I can go a little bit deeper into recognition and growth topics.
Sure. So actually, I want to kind of touch base on the psychology of the individuals and the organizations, because when I hear and Tatev, it would be good to hear from you from an HR perspective. So when I hear disengagement, I say, okay, does it have to do with the individual themselves? Is it or is it the psychology of the individual? Is it the psychology of the organization? Is there a link? From HR perspective, Tatev or Mariam, from your clients and research that you guys have done, is there any link between psychology of individuals and essentially psychology of the organizations?
Definitely, there is a huge link between these both. The first and most important thing, when we forget everything, what we remember is that we as HRs, we work with people. No matter at what level, if it is a C-level or it is just the starting like grades of our company, we work with people. And people and companies and their psychology is interrelated. First, because when we develop our corporate culture, then we build the psychological profile of our future staff. And the psychological profile of our future staff is the face of our company in the future. So companies are managed by people. Companies and people have the same needs, the same basic needs, and the same drivers and the same motivators. People and companies need safety. People need safety, like to fulfill their basic needs, like to buy food, to have a good apartment, and etc. Companies need safety to prove their future growth. Both need to succeed in some points, and both are working towards it. The most ambitious ones, they want to be like the CEOs of the company and whatever, or they want to run their own company. The companies themselves, unless they're NGOs, of course, they also need they also work for the success. What they want is either to be the market leader or to bring some innovation or to bring some change to the market. But the needs of a company, and the company, this is another mantra, I believe, the company is a living like organism. It has all the problems that our body has in some cases of our lives. So I see the link, and I see the link between having bad culture, between not knowing what you want, what experience you want to give you to your staff, to your candidates, whatever, to your clients as well. These are all interrelated, and having disengaged staff. Just having unclear goals and having a clear strategy of in anything, in any aspect, customer service, business management, people management, leads to having a vague and not working overall system and a body system where you have a lot of glitches, where you have a lot of communication issues, where you have lack of recognition, where you promote the wrong people, to where you promote the wrong attitude and relations. And this is where your culture breaks. So there is a link, and when building, when you're like the company is in its transition stage, it has been a small company, it's transforming to a bigger one, you must approach all these issues systematically. And the first thing you have to clarify for yourself is your clear vision of how you're going to run the things and what is your end result, what you want to achieve. Then start choosing the tools. And choosing the tools, imagining in your head that you're building a journey for your company, where you will build a journey for your staff, having clear organizational structure, having clear business processes, if it's, let's say, a developed company already, or if you know that you're like in your younger ages as a company, because companies themselves have different life periods. They develop, they start from the younger ages, then they go to maturity, then they age. And if they don't transform, they die. If they're ready for transformations, they are reborn. So when you're passing these transformation stages, at least in your head, you must understand what changes you want to bring to your company and how these changes are going to be built. The solutions you're going to give in your planning stage are never going to work the way you want them to work when it comes to execution. This is something proven. But when you have the clear vision, it's easier for you, for your staff, to adapt to changes, to resolve the issues they're facing on their way, and to bring success to your company. So everything, you must treat an organization like you would treat a human being, developing a human being. It must be very systematical. It must be extremely clear and visualized for you and for your staff. And the road must be built from, at least for that period of time, as clear as possible.
Thank you for that. And I have a follow-up question, because you mentioned tools. So I'm curious to understand how tech is transforming the way we actually do employee engagement, especially in what's happening right now. Those companies who are prepared to continue with this, maybe some are not. But Mariam, do you have anything to add on this point in terms of psychology, the link between psychology of the individual? And you're muted, I think, Mariam. You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, here it is. Yeah, I'm sorry. So I just muted not to disrupt. Yeah, of course, because the thing is that when we mention some factors like recognition and growth, we can also mention the organization symbol, which is another psychological point of how you are connected with the company. So the organization symbol, what it means basically, it's within the topic of employee branding, which is another huge topic, of course, but basically what it means is that I am connected with my organization, which means I care about its reputation. I have pride in myself that I'm working at this company, and the way that people are going to have a pride in your company, that are working at your company, is through alignment. And when we say alignment, is that when your actions are aligned with the company core values, which means that when the company has a clearly defined set of values, and whatever I do at our company, every standard thing or not standard thing, meaning by the decisions of my manager or by my own decisions. They align with the company core values, and that's how my work and my value alignment bring to my pride in my organization. So that's another psychological perspective, aside, of course, from the recognition and growth, because both are also psychological things. When you give praisal to someone, right? Or when you create the opportunity for people to grow themselves, to because so there are some employees that are like sponge, they want to take a lot of information in, but when they don't have any opportunity to grow, it's another psychological thing, because I might be a great employee, I might be able to do a lot of challenging things, but my growth will stop when I'm given to do some mundane tasks. So meaning some tasks that contain no challenge. So it means that I'm gonna learn every day nothing, like nada. And I'm gonna go from, and of course, when a better opportunity comes from another company, I'll go to another company where I have a better opportunity to grow, and that's something that is going to happen for sure. So that's another. So organizational symbol and this growth part are also one of the things.
That's a very good point. And what I hear is also like this underlying theme, which unfortunately we don't have time to get into, but I think it's important to mention, is that all of these different initiatives have to come from the top. So we can have, at the, at kind of the employee level and, even at mid-level, we can have all of these, the drive and the hunger and, to grow and to deliver and to be creative. But at the same time, the company needs to practice what it preaches, that Tatev mentioned. So, and essentially it starts from the top, from the leadership. Because then we'll be more mindful of who we're putting in what positions and why we're putting those individuals and what is the message we're sending to the rest. I do have a question, but I want to also refer to our chat box here. So Seb mentioned, as people and culture coach, I strongly believe that employees' national culture makes a huge difference in the way they engage, a much more important role than a company culture. And I'd like to know if you ladies agree or disagree if the national culture plays even a bigger role than a culture of the organizational culture. What do you guys think?
Let me start with my answer. Organizations generally build culture based on their national culture. You can, for example, if you build a corporate culture, you bring some great experience from, like, let's say some very great company, but it's not true to your national culture, it's not going to work. Some people will accept it, but culture is something that people are brought up with, and this is something they internalize during all their lifetime. So there is something called culture shock, and it happens very often when people from one culture move to live to another culture, and when they meet these differences from two different cultures. Sometimes they are having a great stress, they're having very, some people even start denying the culture. And we Armenians, as people who have a huge diaspora around the world, we have a very interesting trait. It is called, it hasn't been proved any, it doesn't have any scientific proof, but we have all noticed that there is this term of capsulization. When somebody left the country, let's say in 1995, and he took the culture of that period and he capsulized it, and he's preserving it. So any culture, any corporate culture you build, it has to coincide with your national culture. You can adjust it, you can make some changes, but these changes should be made slightly.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Slightly, very, like, they should be implemented, not like with an axe you cut the culture, your national culture, you say there is no, you follow another thing, but there should be very slight, like, surgical change in human perception of reality. And there comes the hiring thing. If you're hiring people who are very conservative for a company that has very, like, international culture, this link is never going to work. You have to know who you are hiring, your people, your audience from the very beginning. And if you hire the right people, let's say you want to change their mindsets, and you're hiring people who have already developed their career, their personality, and everything, you will have like mismatch here. So I do agree that national culture plays a huge role in forming the corporate culture, and I do agree that I assume, me as an HR, we should consider our national cultural peculiarities, I would say. This is a very old word, but I remember it from school, sorry, when building our corporate culture.
Thank you. And
I hope I answered your question.
thank you. Yes, and also Nabil added that you're right, Seb. National culture plays a big role in engagement level because messages have to be conveyed in a different way. A lot of managers do not have a multicultural knowledge, and the delivery information is just as important as the way they deliver it. And he also added that it's definitely time for companies to implement a CSR strategy like the Japanese, focused on the employees instead of external stakeholders. So, and Mariam, you wanted to add something on this point as well?
I just want to say that first of all, I agree with the person who asked the question. Meaning, if I would say on my perspective, yeah, the international culture is goes deeper, much deeper, because of course it comes from your birth, right? It comes from your birth. The international culture and the values in this culture, their parents had, their grandparents are, now you are having, and then you want to go to another company which has some different culture. Let's say, I don't know, you are conservative, the company that you want to be working at has like loose culture, let's say. And that's going to be difficult, and that's why you have HR people there. I mean, the very first point of recruitment and the first touch point between the employee and the company, that is where you're going to understand whether you like each other or not. I mean, the employee and the company. And of course, you got to have a very good HR person to understand whether this person matches your company. And that's why, first of all, you got to have, as a company, defined values, and then to uncover the values that this person has, to understand any mismatches. And if there is a mismatch, of course, you can't go together in the same boat.
Great, thank you. And also, Hayek mentioned crossing national cultures, the way of engagement changes. People prefer recognition differently. Some like it publicly, some like it privately. He showed that's how it's changing, and it really just shapes. And Seb also mentioned it shapes people's personalities, identities, and expectations. That's great. Thank you guys for your questions and just comments. I also wanted to just back up just a bit when Tatev, you were talking about the different tools. So I want to address the idea of tech, because now what we are experiencing, we all went to tech. We're using a platform now that is helping us. So technology is playing a huge trend in terms of the future of organizations. So what are the major tech trends that are affecting this employee engagement, essentially this topic that we're talking about?
There are like two main trends that are affecting. First of all, platforms that are based on data collection and data analysis. These are platforms generally that are some sort of mixture of like peer-to-peer appreciation platforms. There are a lot of them who are at the same time accumulating data from employee interactions and interactions with corporate values and core values, and giving data to already HR professionals to have some insights on engagement, on engagement level, on like in peer-to-peer relations, where there are good relations, bad relations, maybe there is a good communication, etc. And there are some tendencies, already AI-based tendencies, that are trying to predict employee behavior for up to 1 year periods, and trying to predict, to give analysis on employee engagement based on, some of them are based, like, I don't know how, they're in process of development, but some of them are analyzing the written communication between team members and trying to give some insights on how engaged the employee is based on the verbal communication. In a 1 year perspective, whether this employee is, how likely is this employee to leave the company. So a lot of effort we have already noticed, and we have come to the conclusion that companies understand and accept the importance of employee engagement. And a lot of value and data is put on analyzing the employee engagement as a part of like global business success through data analysis, through building HR AI tools, through sort of giving tools for HRs to be more handy in enhancing overall engagement.
Thank you, Mariam. Anything on the tech side?
Well, on tech side, as Tatev said, there are some tools like peer-to-peer recognition, and also a tool like Eva. They are like building that tool. It's like an AI predictor. Again, as Tatev said, it's gonna predict when someone is going to leave your company some months earlier. But it's like on a very, very early stage. But kind of we're already seeing the trend. People did not only think about it, but they are already building it. No, I think I don't have anything but maybe the NLP part. I think that sometimes when there are some tools actually that when you apply, let's say, recognition at your company, and when we say thank you to each other, and when we mention the reasons, like for example, why I want to say and I want to recognize and say thank you to you, there are some NLPs that understand like what for which reasons mostly, and for which reasons mostly people appreciate each other at your company, let's say.
Okay, it's a good point. Yeah. Thank you, ladies. And another point, so I have just one more question because I think it's important to address it, and then we're going to go ahead and address the questions in the chat box. So those of you who are listening in, please feel free to drop your questions now. I just have one last question from my side. So when we're looking at different generations, now we have this multi-generational workforce. Everybody's motivated and engaged in different ways. How do is there trends when we compare Gen X versus millennials, for example, or Gen Z? So are there trends that you see? How do you, as a manager, let's say, as a leader of an organization, we know that it's also expensive. Essentially, it's a huge expense to engage all the different employees that we have on board, and then you bring in the different cultural backgrounds, then you bring in the different generational backgrounds. So how do you manage it in a way that makes sense?
The first thing to remember is that all three generations have been born in different social and economic situations. Thus, the environment they have been brought up had put different requirements in front of them. When we speak about Generation X, these are people who were born like after the baby boomers. These are people who gave geniuses like Steve Jobs, and these are people who gave birth to I forgot the word, to like hippie movement. This is the generation who is and why are they called Generation X? Because they were considered not to have any like specific cultural or social preferences, but these people are they are some mixture of a conservative upbringing because their parents were baby boomers, and mixture of already changing changing world and changing business environment. It was not that fast in 80s when they were in their 18s and 20s, but still the world started changing. Considering this, these people are, especially in our post-Soviet countries and regions, these people were brought up in Soviet culture and upbringing. These are generally the people who, and our parents as well, who have been working for one and the same employer for years, for more than 10, 20, 50, 25, 30 and more years. They value stability. They don't go much into like these novelty things like corporate culture, social responsibility, and etc. They care for more stability, and they would choose an employer who has longer success history, for a company who is like younger but with a better corporate culture. And as for like millennials or Gen Z, these are the majority of our workforce currently. They have been and me, I'm a millennial as well. I'm not Gen Z, unfortunately. So these people have been born in this already transforming world when business environment changed, and these people are the ones who are more into ideas, who would care, who would choose an employer that is some sort of changing, making a change in the world, and a lot of emphasis has been put by um, companies like Google and like other companies who have been considered good employers on the fact that millennials care for the change they make in the world and the change they make in the company, and the millennials are motivated by ideas first of all rather than the compensation. We care for the team, we care for interesting project, we care projects and this stuff. And as Gen Z, it's um, they're born in a different world. Let's be honest and let's not judge them. Um, we have seen, like me, as a millennial, I have seen a smartphone when I was like 18 or 20. They are born with smartphones. Their communication type, their like mindset is totally different. They see no boundaries. Like they can have friends from all over the world without even meeting these people. So they're more demanding. I wouldn't say that they're very team oriented, unlike like millennials that were more team players. Gen Z, they are more into their personal goals. They're very entrepreneurs because the more it's again human like nature. The more you experience, the more you see, the more open-minded you are, the more questions you ask, and the more answers you look for. And when you don't find those answers, you start building finding ways to give answers to these questions. And this is the first point of building a startup. Your startup, if it is authentic, it has to solve at least one pain for the society. And they're coming to like.
Oops. Sorry, 1 second. Just a second, ladies. All right, go ahead. Sorry, we had some background noise. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So there is difference, and you can, when knowing your audience and when knowing your business needs, and this is when we come again to like shaping employee experience first. You're able to utilize all their strengths in putting them in their right area where they're strong. Like it is a marketing department that is of a company that's like growing in the market at a crazy pace, at a crazy speed. It's growing like 200% annually, and you bring somebody from Gen X and tell them get adapted to the change, they're gonna get crazy. Sorry, but it's an HR thing to understand your audience and to utilize the strength of your audience, putting them in the right place.
Thank you, Tatev. I'm just mindful of the time we have left together, and we have quite a few comments and questions. But what I hear also from Tatev and from just the conversation we're having is that there's really no one way to do this. It just purely depends on the leadership, on the size of the organization, on a different generational, and it should be individualized approach. And this is what we see across different topics when it comes to employee engagement and organizational growth, is how do you engage everybody and how do you keep people motivated. And there's really no one way. You need to do it at the individual level, which then again brings me back to leadership role and all of this. So and we had, let me just read out some questions. So we had from Stuart, we had a comment and a question. So we've been talking about the power of recognition and enhancing employee engagement. Our companies comprise of dynamic people with different personalities and different behaviors, and therefore different sources of motivation. Absolutely. As leaders in business, how can we manage the different forms, the different natures of recognition that will empower our variety of employees? And I think that's kind of what we talked a bit about. But is there anything you guys want to add from your experience of working with organizations, and what has worked for your clients when you've implemented strong employee engagement programs? What are some, if you can give like two or three top tips that people can really implement tomorrow in their organizations, for example?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, recognition plays a huge role. And it may seem very simple, it's not, because you need to recognize your employees in the right way. And basically, yeah, the recognition is when you just praise your employee. And what happens when the person is not recognized or appreciated? For example, I'm a great employee, but I'm not recognized. No one says thank you to me for my delivered results and extraordinary results. And I'll say, okay, if you don't say thank you to me, why should I care about my company? I'll just do the task that I'm given and that's it. So this employee, if he or she was recognized, would go home and even after work would think, okay, how can I improve what I'm doing in my workplace? And this will happen if the person is recognized in the right way.
Yeah, in the right way, that is
now,
right
yeah, in the right
well,
way.
for them as well. For
Sure.
them, as personalized, as Stuart also mentioned, the personalized recognition. So how do we manage this personalized
Sure.
recognition system?
Yes, of course. Now the thing is that at companies, like, you can't have people, let's say, I don't know, the CEO or the manager in even like bigger companies, and to go just one by one employees to say, for example, thank you, Tatev, thank you, Elena, for this and this and that. Of course, it's not going to happen. And the thing is that why do we see recognition as a top-down thing? Why don't we see it as a decentralized thing? And when I say decentralized thing, it's exactly about the peer-to-peer appreciation. So when the colleagues say thank you to each other, because the colleagues, for example, if we together, let's say the three of us are working at a company in the same team, right? We are working in the same team and we are sitting together and we see what we do, what we are good at, what we are bad at, and we can give constructive or good feedback, and we can say thank you to each other in the meaningful way. So for example, if Elena, you came and helped me with something, let's say I have a help with presentation and you helped me with that presentation, I want to say thank you to you. And if I say, for example, thanks Elena for helping, so that's not really a good way of saying thank you. That's not, because of course thank you, like, for helping, but for what? And first of all, like, it needs to be a public thank you. So you gotta use some platforms that are going to give you the opportunity to make it public, so that about your good job, it's not only you and me knowing about it. So that's one. And second of all, a great recognition would happen in this way. If you came and helped me with the presentation, I say thank you, Elena, for helping me with the presentation. Even at your tough schedule, I learned a lot of design skills, and I know right now in the MS PowerPoint Office better. I learned from you this, and that. So that's actually saying, like, how you was helpful to me. So that's in a meaningful way. But there is even a much deeper recognition that I can go deep into, because that's something that we have learned in the last few months. Like, even ourselves, we have learned that it's very, very deep. So with our company, we had like two people, Sevak, who's a developer, and we had Sirun, marketing manager. So Sevak shows up at work at 9 a.m. always, even though our work starts at 10 a.m. And Sirun, so we were used to it, but Sirun was a new hire, and it was new to her. So Sirun publicly recognized Sevak for showing up early for the focused work. And in this case, Sevak didn't help Sirun in any way, but Sirun recognized one of the Sevak's values, which is being early bird and showing up early, being disciplined. So that's another deeper level of recognition. Or if another example I can give is that last year we were participating in two exhibitions, WCIT happening in Armenia, and then Digitech Expo, Tech Expo happening in Armenia every year. And so me and my co-founder went to WCIT, and we asked our marketing managers, Sirun and Lilith, to go to Digitech Expo. We asked them to do something that they had never done before, and it was tough for them, but they said, yeah, we're going to do that. We can do that. And Digitech Expo is actually on our way to our office. So the other guys at our company, they saw Lilith and Sirun on their way to office. They saw that they are Digitech Expo being exhibitors, and they recognized both of them. And I still remember that they said, thank you for your self-sacrifice. So Sirun and Lilith helped us, but the other team members said thank you to them, because they went the extra mile for us. Right. And then after one person saying thank you to Lilith and Sirun, the others rolled up and said, yeah, publicly, thank you guys, you're doing a great job. It went like a snowball. So the two ways is like being, first of all, doing it publicly. Second of all, it's being very, very specific in what you are saying and giving a meaningful recognition. And third of all, you can recognized, not only in the places where someone helps you, but if I see two people are helping each other and I see a great value in it, and I can recognize them both. So that's another recognition that you can give. So because that creates connection, emotional connection also.
Thank you. And we just have time for just one more question, and I want to read some of the comments as well. But essentially, also, and Mariam, you mentioned that doing it publicly, but I think also it's good to keep in mind as well that at the end of the day, everybody's, and I think it was Stuart who mentioned it, is that everybody has different ways they want to be recognized. So not everybody wants a public recognition. It might work for the majority, and it kind of it kind of creates that culture, maybe an organization, but not everybody is maybe feeling comfortable with that as well. And there was a couple of good points as well from Nabil. He said that referring back to our earlier point, is the digitalization effect on different generations is still studied and under scrutiny. And they had a very interesting study in Dubai during the SHRM event, and it was found out that the behavior and expectations that are not only linked to the generation. An introvert millennial can have the same aspirations and expectations of a baby boomer. That's really interesting, Nabil. Yeah, if you guys have any studies, by the way, any research, and for you ladies as well, Tatev and Mariam, you've mentioned a couple of things. If you can just drop in the chat box, maybe some keywords people can look up, maybe some websites, or if you can just drop some links for everybody to kind of take advantage of as well throughout this. And Nabil also mentioned that they used a suggestion box where employees could drop their ideas. The critical thing was the reaction lead time of management, no more than 1 week, to discuss the idea during a mini corporate meeting, showing the employees that they do have a voice, that their voice goes a long way. That's a great point. And Seb mentioned that, again, there's a cultural element to that too, because not everyone would appreciate being recognized publicly. Yes, so I think keeping cultural element in place is also very important. And Herrera said Gen Z are less human to human interaction except through tech. So it's funny because before everybody used to pick on the millennials, now we're picking on the Gen Z generation. And the last question I wanted to so just to summarize from the discussion so far, is that it seems that there's really no one way, and it truly needs to be personalized, whether it is through recognition or whatever, or a generation approach. It really needs to be essentially individualized. And Tatev, I don't know what happened. Let me unmute you. And last question that I want to address, and we've had a lot of questions, and that's amazing, but I'm just mindful that we're already just a minute over time. But Olga asked, and I think it's important, how can employees help themselves when there's no engagement and no recognition from the company, and when the self-motivation is fading? So let's say you're in a position where so many people are, for better or for worse, where they're in a company, things are not going to improve. The company does not recognize, and there's no initiative for that, but you need the job, you need, at least for the meantime. So how can you make the best of the situation and still have that self-motivation going? So, well, I think that's a good way to end the conversation as well. So please.
Yeah. So I can bring some examples of what other companies were doing when they did not have, let's say, any recognition program, but that was some kind of initiative of a small kind of recognition program by employees. So in some companies, if it's a tech company, they have, let's say, a Slack channel. And in that Slack channel, they have one channel, it's called Shout Out, or You Made My Day. And in this channel, people just say each other thank you, and they, I don't know, just say why I'm doing a shout out, let's say to Tatev, why I'm doing a shout out to Elena, and through emojis, I'm just sending points to each other. Let's say, I don't know, apples, or I don't know, some different emojis, etc. Another thing that people have done, I've seen it, is that they were doing, let's say, like an offline recognition. They took their company logo, they created some, small wooden company logos, and they would give to each other in the company, saying thank you and mentioning the reason. So the logos were kind of points, and they were giving this to each other. So that's the thing, that these are two very good things that I have seen doing in companies. But sadly, these are things that will not last very long. I mean, in just 2-3 months, people will gonna be bored about this. I mean, sustainable thing. But if you do it, and if you can enforce it from bottom to up, say, hey, we need a recognition program, and look how well it works. That's how you can make it sustainable.
Great. And Tatev, anything you have to add in terms of also Olga's question in regards to how do you also stay self-motivated throughout all this?
There are like two approaches. If you want to self-motivate yourself, like a personal approach, you should at least find some linkages between your goals, personal goals, and corporate goals. Let's say you're a marketing professional and the company is a strong marketing brand. So being a part of that strong marketing brand enhances your professional acceptance in the market. So at least finding ways to self-motivate yourself and to keep engaged to the company vision. Because if this company keeps being a very strong marketing brand in the market and you're head of the marketing or you're a member of the marketing team, you are ensuring a prosperity future for your career. This is one approach. The other approach is like initiatives Mariam said, but here we must understand, and it's a very dangerous tool to give to the staff from HR perspective, because some businesses, especially the ones that are focused on performance, that are strictly structured and that are very well controlled, in some cases, they don't need much emphasis on employee engagement because they have their metrics, how to measure the performance. And here, the engagement doesn't matter for the business. It doesn't mean that the engagement doesn't matter at all. It means that it is not relevant for this business. And if we're giving our staff a hint, telling them, you can do this and this and this, all these approaches can start ruining the business from inside. Because when no business can succeed if the company is going in one direction and the staff is going in the opposite direction. Either the business must have ears to its staff and understand that maybe engagement is something what interests their team, or at least the teams must be acknowledge that this is not the direction we want to take our company towards. So the two solutions, as I said, finding a linkage between your personal goals and corporate goals, and like having initiatives, of course, if they don't they go along with company strategy.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Tatev. So I think we'll pause here. I know we're already over time, and I think this is such an interesting topic, and I know we can maybe we should have done this longer. Maybe we should do a part 2 of something like this. But I think we'll pause here. Also, for those of you who want to connect with the ladies, oops, I'm trying to get to the next screen. There you go. For those of you who want to connect and learn more about Lucky Care, please visit them on their website. You have also Mariam's contact information right there. If there is, again, if you have any further questions, maybe you can just drop us an email. Maybe we can address it via email. Thank you so much for everybody who sent questions. Mariam, Tatev, big thank you guys for just joining us and for your insights. Really appreciate it. We really hope that we get to do this again with you guys, and everybody's dropping notes and saying thank you, and you guys have made their day. And stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Stay safe, and we will catch you next time. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just drop in the questions to us. We're happy to talk more later.
The contact is on the slides, so you should be able to see it. So yeah, stay in touch. And where can they find you? Are you guys on LinkedIn? Are you guys on? Do you have your company page on LinkedIn? Yeah. So that's So they can also join then. Awesome. All right. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for